Welcome back, everyone, to another exploration in our Wisdom of the Philosopher series.
Great to be here.
Today, we're looking into Plato's Sophist, drawing from the Benjamin Jowett translation, readily available on Project Gutenberg.
That's right.
And our aim, really, is to get a handle on Plato's view of the sophist figure, this really tricky idea of not being, and also the philosophical methods he's using.
Yeah, and the sophist dialogue itself is quite distinct, isn't it? Plato sort of jumps right into the deep end, philosophically
He
speaking.
does. Less scene-setting, more immediate argument.
Exactly. He even acknowledges it might seem a bit, well, dry for some readers.
Mm-hmm.
But thinkers like Hegel actually saw it as a high point of Plato's work.
Interesting. So what we want to do today is unpack those core ideas, especially how Plato's engaging with the whole intellectual climate of his day.
Right, where these sophisticated arguments, these sophisms, were really challenging philosophical truth itself.
Yeah.
They did this by, among other things, denying that not being could even exist or that ideas could connect.
Which sounds like it would make philosophy pretty difficult, if not impossible.
It certainly throws a spanner in the works.
Okay, so let's start with the sophist character. It's not Socrates leading the charge here, is it? It's an Eleatic stranger.
That's a key point. Yes, an Eleatic stranger, described as a pupil of Parmenides and Zeno. We saw Plato do something similar in the Timaeus, sidelining Socrates a bit.
What do you think that signals? Why this shift?
Well, it likely shows Plato moving beyond, maybe, the direct Socratic methods or focus. By bringing in an Eleatic, he's directly engaging with that school of thought, the followers of Parmenides, who thought so deeply about being.
And maybe the Megarians, too.
And the Megarians, yes. Like Plato's taking their ideas seriously, grappling with them, refining them, maybe showing where they go wrong, but also what's valuable. He's putting their concepts under his own philosophical microscope.
So how does this Eleatic stranger actually describe the sophist? I gather it's not exactly a glowing review.
Oh, definitely not. The sophist is painted as a master of illusion, a charlatan, really, the polar opposite of a true teacher or philosopher.
So dealing in tricks and appearances.
Exactly, intellectual sleight of hand. Plato presents him as this sort of multifaceted figure, sometimes boastful, sometimes purely argumentative, a bit like a rhetorician, or even a lawyer focused only on winning.
Is he talking about specific people here? Like, is this a portrait of Protagoras or Gorgias?
That's a common question. But it seems less like a direct portrait and more like an idealized representation of intellectual falsehood itself.
An archetype.
An archetype, yes. Plato is definitely responding to the kinds of arguments real sophists made, but the figure in the dialogue is perhaps more of a composite, embodying the philosophical dangers he sees.
That makes sense. And the word sophist itself had a history, right? It wasn't always negative.
Correct. Originally, it could just mean someone clever, an inventor, someone skilled, but by Plato's time, certainly in his circles, it had picked up negative baggage.
You see that in how people reacted to the label.
Absolutely. Protagoras apparently felt the need to defend himself when called a sophist. And Plato mentions Hippocrates being embarrassed even to be associated with one, so Plato's tapping into an existing unease.
He uses some striking images comparing the sophist to a hunter, a retailer.
Yes, these analogies are very telling. The hunter analogy, specifically hunting tame land animals, meaning humans, through persuasion.
Ah, so it highlights the manipulative aspect.
Precisely. Capturing minds through rhetoric, not force. And then the retail trader image, selling knowledge or virtue for a fee.
Which implies it's just a commodity for them, not a pursuit of truth.
Exactly. It diminishes the whole enterprise. And the dispute and comparison emphasizes the focus on winning arguments, heuristics, rather than finding understanding, taking higher for it, specifically.
But I seem to recall there's a slight twist. Doesn't Plato hint at maybe a more positive or at least complex side? Something about purification.
You're right. That's a fascinating, almost paradoxical moment. He does explore a definition that links the sophist to a kind of purification of the soul from false opinions, which sounds surprisingly Socratic.
Like clearing away ignorance.
Yes. It suggests that maybe the techniques associated with sophistry, critical examination, argument aren't inherently bad, but they are misused by the figure he's ultimately defining. It adds a layer of complexity.
Okay, let's shift gears to the method Plato uses here. This obsessio infiniti, the method of division. How does that work?
Think of it as a systematic classification. You start with a very general category that includes what you want to define, and then you divide it. You keep dividing the relevant side of the division until you can't divide anymore, until you've isolated the specific thing.
He gives the example of defining an angler, doesn't he?
Yes, that's the famous example. Art is divided into making things productive and getting things acquisitive. Angling falls under acquisitive. Then you divide acquisitive into exchange and conquest capture. Angling is capture, then capture by force versus craft self. Angling is stealth, and so on.
Dividing and dividing.
Until you arrive at the very specific definition. The art of fishing by striking, specifically drawing the fish up from below angling.
It sounds very logical, very neat. But did Plato think this method was perfect?
Not necessarily foolproof, no. He actually discusses its limitations elsewhere, like in The Statesman and Philebus. The key is making the right divisions.
Cutting nature at its joints, as the saying goes.
Exactly that phrase. It's not just about any division, but about finding the real, natural categories or kinds. You need careful judgment to ensure your divisions reflect reality and lead you to a true species, not just an arbitrary grouping.
And so this method is applied directly to defining the sophist.
Yes, following a similar, though more complex, branching path. The sophist ends up defined, through one line of division, as a kind of hunter of humans, using persuasion, doing it privately, demanding payment, and professing to teach virtue for that fee.
Got it. Okay, now for the really deep stuff. This puzzle of not being. Why was this such a big deal?
It was a fundamental metaphysical problem, largely stemming from Parmenides. Parmenides had argued, very powerfully, that you cannot think or speak of what is not, because it simply doesn't exist.
So if not being doesn't exist,
Then how can you possibly say something false? A false statement seems to be precisely about saying something that is not the case. If what is not has no reality, then falsehood seems impossible.
it sounds like a real paradox. Even denying not being seems to involve talking about it.
Exactly. Plato points that out. To even say not being is unthinkable or not being does not exist, you're using the term, treating it as something, giving it a kind of unity or subjecthood in your very denial. It's a head-scratcher.
So how does Plato get around this? What's his solution?
His brilliant move is to reconceive not being. He argues it's not the absolute opposite of being, not sheer nothingness. Instead, not being is difference or otherness.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Not being as otherness.
Think about it like this. When we say motion is not rest, we're not saying motion is nothing. We're saying motion is different from rest. It participates in being. It exists.
Yeah.
But it also participates in not being in relation to rest. It is not rest.
Ah, I see. So is not means is different from or is other than.
Precisely. Not being becomes relational. Things cannot be something else while still fully being themselves.
And this allows for falsehood. How does that connect?
Because a false statement, then, isn't about saying something utterly non-existent. It's about misstating the relationships of otherness and sameness. It's saying that something is the same as X when it is actually other than X, or saying something's not Y is other than Y when it actually is Y. It's asserting the wrong relationship.
That makes a lot more sense. And it helps with those old Eleatic problems, like how motion and rest can both exist if they seem like opposites.
Absolutely. Motion is, it partakes of being, and rest is, it also partakes of being. But motion is not rest. It partakes of not being relative to rest. They both exist, but they are different. This understanding resolves the apparent contradiction.
So every concept, every form or kind exists, but it also is not countless other things.
Exactly. Plato concludes that every class or kind has a plurality of being, it participates in being, and an infinity of not being. It is different from infinitely many other kinds.
Now, Plato also seems keen to place his own ideas in context, talking about this battle of the philosophers. Who's he sparring with?
He's very aware of the philosophical landscape. He references, sometimes implicitly, earlier thinkers, the pre-Socratics like Heraclitus, Flux, and the Eleatics, Permanence. He critiques what he calls materialists, the earth-born giants who only believe in what they can touch.
And also the friends of ideas.
Yes, who might be interpreted as perhaps more extreme Platonists or others who insisted on a completely separate, untouchable world of forms, maybe to the point of disconnecting it from the world we experience. He's positioning himself carefully.
And the Aristics or Megarians get special mention again.
They do. They were known for arguments that seemed to deny predication itself, the idea that you could meaningfully say X is Y. Plato clearly saw their methods as closely related to the sophists' way of confusing arguments and undermining truth.
So Plato's trying to show that connections between ideas are possible and real.
Definitely. He wants to demonstrate that we can make meaningful statements, that fundamental concepts do relate to each other in thought and language, despite sophistical attempts to deny it.
Which leads nicely into this idea of the communion of kinds. What's that about?
This is really central. It's the insight that some kinds, or fundamental concepts like being, motion, rest, sameness, difference, can combine or participate in each other, while others cannot.
Like letters forming words.
That's one analogy he uses, yes. Some letters combine to make meaningful words, others just form gibberish. Or, like musical notes, some combine harmoniously, others create dissonance.
And the philosopher is the one who understands these connections.
Exactly. The true philosopher, the dialectician, possesses the science or art of knowing which kinds blend with which and which repel each other. It's about understanding the underlying structure of reality and thought.
Without this communion, could we even speak or reason?
Plato argues no. If no kinds combined, every statement would be impossible. If all kinds combined indiscriminately, thought would dissolve into chaos. Discourse relies on this selective blending.
Okay, so wrapping this all together, how does this understanding of not being in communion bring us back to the sophist and falsehood?
Well, having established that not being as otherness is real and that kinds can combine, Plato can now definitively account for false statements and false opinions.
Because they misrepresent these connections.
Precisely. A false statement happens when you assert other as the same, or not being in the sense of difference, as being in the sense of identity. You're combining kinds incorrectly in your statement or thought.
And this finally lets him pin down the sophist as an image maker.
Yes. Because false discourse is possible, the sophist's activity makes sense. He's an image maker, but not one who creates true likenesses, diakastike, which would require knowledge. He's a creator of deceptive appearances, fantastike.
Using illusion.
Using illusion, yes. He deals in phantasms, appearances that seem real but aren't. Plato distinguishes likeness-making based on knowing the proportions of the original from appearance-making, which uses tricks of perspective to seem correct. The sophist operates in the latter realm, driven by opinion and ignorance, not knowledge, but masking it with a pretense of wisdom.
Wow. Okay, so stepping back through this really intricate argument in the Sophist, Plato gives us this deep analysis of the sophist figure, but also these foundational ideas about not being as difference and the communion of kinds.
Absolutely. It's a dialogue that tackles deception and falsehood head-on, but in doing so, lays groundwork for understanding truth, reality, and how language itself functions. His engagement with the philosophical debates of his time is remarkable.
And the idea of the communion of kinds that feels incredibly fundamental to just thinking clearly.
It really is. It underpins logic and meaningful communication. It's Plato showing how structure and relationship are essential for reality and our grasp of it.
It really makes you think about how relevant this all still is. We're constantly surrounded by information, persuasion, potential deception. Understanding the roots of distinguishing truth from falsehood feels more important than ever.
Indeed. The challenge of discerning genuine knowledge from persuasive appearances hasn't gone away.
We definitely encourage you, our listeners, to ponder these ideas from the Sophist. How does Plato's analysis of the image maker resonate with our modern world of media and online discourse?
And perhaps consider this. If not being is fundamentally about difference, about how things relate to what they are not, what does that imply for how we understand identity, categories, and even opposition in our own thinking? It's a subtle but potentially profound shift.
Definitely food for thought. If you found this exploration insightful, please do like this discussion and subscribe to our channel for more in the Wisdom of the Philosopher series.
And click that notification bell so you don't miss our next conversation.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts and questions on Plato's Sophist in the comments section below. Your engagement really enriches this whole process.
We look forward to continuing the journey with you.